An elderly mechanic quietly restores a stranger's classic car, never expecting anything in return. A week later, the owner, Keanu Reeves, comes back and is stunned to learn the truth about the old man's past and the sacrifice behind the simple repair. What starts as a routine fix turns into a life-changing act of gratitude that saves the mechanic's garage and forever links their futures. If you had walked past the old garage that night, you probably wouldn't have looked twice. It was just another tired building, washed in yellow light, the kind of place people forget until their car dies on a lonely street. Inside, the smell of oil and cold metal mixed with something older, something that did not belong to this century. The elderly mechanic stood alone at his workbench, his hands black with grease, his blue shirt faded at the elbows. His name was Elias, and to anyone who saw him, he was just a thin old man who worked too late and slept too little. But the truth sat quietly behind his calm eyes. For 600 years, Elias had been called many things: monster, shadow, lord of the night. In the old languages, his title meant one simple thing: the vampire king. Now he tightened bolts instead of wearing crowns, and the only throne he allowed himself was a cracked metal stool by the front desk. He preferred it this way. Machines were easier than people. Machines did not scream or beg or betray. They broke and he fixed them. That was enough. Tonight, though, something gnawed at him. His hearing was too sharp, his hunger too loud. The small fridge in the back held a few glass bottles of donated blood from the night clinic down the road. It kept the monster quiet usually, but lately even that had not been enough. Age did not touch his face, but it weighed on his soul. The older he grew, the more memories he carried, and the quieter he became. He had just reached for a wrench when he heard it, a familiar mechanical cough out on the street, followed by the grinding, desperate wheeze of a dying engine. The sound shook free a small smile from him. Cars, at least, did him the courtesy of announcing their pain. Headlights washed across the grimy windows. A sleek black car crawled into the lot and rolled to a stop, steam rising faintly from under the hood. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, rubbing the back of his neck, looking first at the car and then at the flickering sign. For a heartbeat, Elias almost laughed. Of all the faces he had seen in all his centuries, this one he recognized from glowing screens in the apartments above the shop. Action hero, internet legend, the man the world loved to project their fantasies onto. Keanu Reeves pushed his hair from his face and squinted at the midnight MOTORS sign like he didn't want to bother anyone at this hour. Elias felt an odd flutter in his chest. Fame meant nothing to him. Kings had bowed before him once. Still, there was something about the man's tired eyes that looked very normal, very human, not a star, just someone stranded on a bad night. The bell above the door chimed as Keanu stepped inside, brushing a light sheen of mist from his jacket. "Hey," he said softly, as if he were afraid of waking the building. "Sorry, man, are you still open?" Elias wiped his hands on a rag and tried to remember to blink at a human pace. "If the lights are on, I'm open," he replied. His voice carried an old, polished warmth, like someone who had practiced kindness for a very long time. "What's wrong with her?" Keanu jerked his thumb toward the car. "She just gave up on me. Temperature gauge went crazy, smelled like something burning. I pulled over before she could finish the job." He paused, then added with a small, self-conscious grin, "I'm Kia." "I know," Elias said gently, saving him from the awkward introduction. "You're the man whose face made the kids upstairs stop doing their homework last year. They watched your movie 3 times in 1 week. The landlord was furious." Keanu laughed, a little surprised, a little relieved. Sorry about their grades." Elias shook his head. "They're good kids. They needed a hero for a while. You'll be fine." He walked past Keanu toward the car, moving with a grace that did not match his age. He forced himself to keep his pace slow, to let his joints look stiff, human. In truth, every part of him wanted to blur into motion, to peel the engine apart in seconds and be back inside before the man could blink. But centuries of hiding had taught him patience. When he lifted the hood, the car exhaled a wave of heat and the faint smell of burned coolant. Elias leaned in. The sounds of the street fell away. The ticking of cooling metal blended with something far more dangerous, the rhythm of a human heart beating just behind him. He heard every subtle change in that heartbeat, the stress, the fatigue, the small stutter of hunger. The scent of warm blood brushed against his senses like the memory of a song he was trying to forget. Elias closed his eyes for half a second and focused on the machine. "Overheated," he murmured. "Water pump S on its last breath. You're lucky you pulled over." Keanu rubbed the back of his neck again. "Is it bad?" "Bad for impatient people." Elias reached for his tools. "Good for anyone who likes coffee and stories. It'll take an hour, maybe two." Keanu smiled. "Coffee and stories I can do." They moved inside while Elias ordered the replacement part from a 24-hour warehouse with the kind of speed only a very lonely person developed. He pointed Keanu toward an old, but clean, plastic chair and a coffee machine that had seen better days. As the machine groaned to life, Keanu glanced around. The walls were lined with framed photos, but not of race cars or trophies. Children at a picnic, teenagers in graduation gowns, a girl with paint on her face laughing so hard her eyes were closed. Each picture had a tiny note written on the frame: "First job, scholarship, out of the system." Keanu leaned forward. "These your kids?" Elias paused with a handful of receipts. "In a way," he said quietly, "not by blood, just by choice." There it was again, that human thing in him he could never quite kill. The need to protect, to fix more than just engines. "I used to run a shelter out back," Elias continued. "For kids who had nowhere to go, most of them grew up and left. I like to keep proof that they made it." He chuckled softly. "Humans underestimate how loud their success can sound even years later." Keanu watched him with that focused, listening look people rarely gave each other anymore. "You still run it?" "Not officially. The city cut funding, but the building upstairs is mine. If someone needs a bed, I find room." Elias nodded toward the ceiling. "There's a 12-year-old up there right now, drawing monsters in her sketchbook because she thinks monsters are easier to understand than people. She's not wrong." Keanu's expression softened. "You're doing all that and still fixing cars alone at midnight." "There are worse ways to spend eternity," Elias said before he could stop himself. The word slipped out dressed as a joke, but his tongue tasted the truth in it like metal. Keanu laughed politely. "Yeah, some days feel like that." He took a sip of coffee, grimaced, then drank again anyway. "You know, you sound like a guy who's lived a lot of lives." "Too many," Elias replied, then quickly bent over the counter to shuffle invoices, hiding the flicker of pain in his eyes. Keanu's gaze drifted to a corner of the desk where a small stack of unopened letters sat, rubber banded together and stamped in red. "Final notice." He pretended not to see them. Humility recognized humility. Instead, he pulled a chair closer to the counter. "So, tell me about the kids," he said. "You said they needed a hero. What about you, Elias? You ever need one?" The question pierced deeper than either of them expected. For a moment, the old vampire forgot to pretend he was only a man. Something in his shoulders sagged and his voice came out thin. "I needed one for a very long time," he admitted. "But sometimes, when you live long enough, you realize no one is coming. So you either become the monster they fear or the hero you wished for." Keanu sat with that. The garage was quiet, just the hum of a cheap refrigerator and the distant buzz of a street lamp fighting the dark. "Which one did you choose?" he asked gently. Elias looked up, and for a heartbeat his eyes were not those of a tired mechanic, but of someone who had watched empires crumble and still chose to keep his hands steady. "I'm still choosing," he said. The part arrived. Under the sharp white lights, Elias worked faster than any human his age should have been able to. His fingers moved with absolute precision, guided not just by experience but by senses that felt the smallest crack in metal, the tiniest weakness in a hose. He hid his speed by stopping every few minutes to wipe his hands, to crack his neck, to sigh out of habit. Keanu wandered around the shop as he waited, occasionally stepping outside to take a call, always coming back with an apology, never treating Elias like staff, always like a person. Every time he laughed, the sound pushed back the shadows pressed against the garage windows. By the time Elias lowered the hood and wiped the last trace of oil from his arms, dawn was threatening the horizon. A faint gray line seeped into the sky. Elias' skin prickled with a different kind of urgency now. "It's done," he said, forcing his voice steady. "Try not to kill her again." Keanu reached into his pocket. "What do I owe you?" Elias named a number so low, it was almost an insult to his own skill. Keanu frowned. "No way, that's not even close to what this is worth." "It's what I charge," Elias said. "You needed help. You'll remember the kindness longer than I'll remember the money." Keanu studied him, then slowly nodded. "Okay," he said, "but kindness goes both ways." He counted bills onto the counter, more than double what Elias had asked, and casually slid them across together with a folded piece of paper. Elias tried to push some of it back, but Keanu closed his hand over the old man's fingers for just a second. The touch was warm, alive, painful in a way Elias didn't expect. "I'm filming downtown next week," Keanu said. "Come by, eat at the set, watch the chaos, or don't, but at least call that number if you ever need anything. Seriously, you took care of me tonight. Let me return the favor." Elias pulled his hand away as carefully as if he were handling glass. "I live quietly," he murmured. "Your world is very bright." "Yeah," Keanu admitted. "Sometimes too bright, but there's good people there, and we're always short one decent mechanic." The idea of stepping into glaring daylight into cameras and crowds made Elias' chest tighten. But another thought pushed through, the stack of final notices, the kids upstairs, the building he might lose. Brave choices did not belong only to the living. "A week, you said?" Elias asked. "A week," Keanu confirmed, opening the car door. "Evening shoot. Come after dark if you want. I'll have someone meet you at the gate." The first rays of sun were starting to lick the tops of the buildings across the street. Every instinct in Elias' body screamed at him to retreat, to dive into the shadows beneath the shop and pull the darkness over him like a blanket. "Be safe, Mr. Reeves," he said. Keanu smiled, that crooked, easy smile the world knew so well. "You too, Elias, and hey, I meant it. Call if you need a hero." The words hit harder than they should have. The black car roared back to life and rolled into the waking city. Elias watched it go, one hand pressed lightly against the doorframe, feeling the heat of the growing day creep closer. When the car turned the corner and disappeared, he locked the front door, pulled heavy blackout curtains over the windows, and made his way to the hidden staircase behind the tool closet. Down below, beneath the garage, the air changed. It cooled and thickened, humming with old magic. Stone walls swallowed the city noise. Candles flickered to life as he passed, sensing their king. The basement opened into a chamber that did not belong anywhere near Lowe's Angels. Vaulted ceilings, carved pillars, a circle of worn steps leading to a simple chair made of black wood and iron. No velvet, no jewels. A throne built for a king who had grown tired of luxury. Elias sank into it and finally let his shoulders fall. His teeth ached, his hunger clawed, but his heart, dead for centuries, felt strangely restless. "You almost slipped," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was soft, neither male nor female, old as his own reflection. "You almost told him what you are." Elias did not bother to search for the source. The voice was part memory, part guilt, part the echo of the council that had once knelt before him. "I told him enough," he said. "I told him I am still choosing." "And which choice is this?" the voice asked. "To fix his car, to watch him drive away into a sun you can never touch. You are a king hiding in a hole, Elias. Your people scatter. Your power fades. For what? For kindness." The last word dripped with doubt. "For peace," he answered. "I have led enough wars. I would rather fix engines and save lost children than rule a kingdom of fear." The silence that followed was heavy, disapproving, but it could not drown the echo of Keanu's last sentence ringing in his mind. "Call if you need a hero." He almost laughed. What hero could a vampire king possibly need? A week later, as the sun slid down and the city's neon veins began to glow, Keanu Reeves stood again outside Midnight Motors, this time holding a folder under his arm. Inside were numbers, phone contacts, and a quiet plan. He had asked a producer friend about buying out small debts, about saving a little garage on the edge of nowhere without making the old man feel like a charity case. He didn't know why he cared so much. Maybe it was the tired kindness in Elias' eyes. Maybe it was the photos of those kids who had nowhere else to go. Maybe, in a life where people constantly offered him things he hadn't asked for, it felt good to give something back that actually mattered. The sign over the garage flickered weakly. The front window was dark. Keanu frowned and knocked on the glass. No answer. He tried the door. It was unlocked. "Elias," he called softly, stepping inside. The air felt different tonight. Cooler, somehow thicker, carrying the faint scent of wax and something like old stone after rain. The workspace was empty, tools neatly hung, the car bay clear. A single light burned at the back, seeping out from behind the hanging curtain that hid the small storage room. Keanu followed it, his heartbeat picking up for reasons he couldn't name. "Elias, it's me, the guy who nearly murdered his engine last week." No reply. He pushed the curtain aside and found another door. Metal, old, half hidden behind a tall shelf. It was slightly open, as if someone had forgotten to close it all the way. Curiosity tugged at him. He slipped through, feeling a draft of air that smelled impossibly ancient for a building in Los Angeles. A narrow staircase led down, carved straight into the earth. Soft, flickering light glowed at the bottom. Every sensible part of his brain told him to turn back. But something deeper, that same something that drove him to do his own stunts and his own kindness, urged him on. Step by careful step, he descended. The staircase opened into a cavernous room that stole the breath from his lungs. Stone columns, circles of candles, symbols etched into the floor that looked like they were drawn from nightmares and fairy tales at once. And in the center of it all, standing before a simple dark throne, was Elias. His posture was no longer that of a tired mechanic. He stood tall, ageless, a black coat flowing around him like liquid night. His eyes glowed softly, not red and monstrous, but a deep, impossible gold like embers under snow. Around him, half a dozen pale figures watched in reverent silence. Men and women, young and old, their faces soft, not cruel, as if they were patients gathered around a gentle doctor. Elias was speaking, his voice echoing with a power Keanu had never heard before. "We do not hunt," Elias said. "We do not harm, we live in the shadows, but we will not let the darkness own us. We are more than our hunger, we are more than the stories they tell." Keanu froze at the bottom step, the folder slipping from his numb fingers and spilling papers across the ancient stone. Every head turned. Elias looked up and saw him. Time seemed to stop between them, the humble mechanic and the action star, the vampire king and the man who had offered him a hero. For the first time in 6 centuries, fear flashed in Elias' immortal eyes, not of hunters, not of sunlight, but of one good human man finally seeing who he really was. "Keanu," Elias whispered, his voice cracking on the name. The room held its breath. And in that hanging second, with the underground candles flickering and 2 worlds colliding in one hidden chamber, neither of them knew whether this was the beginning of a miracle or the end of everything Elias had tried to build. For a long, shaking heartbeat, no one moved. Keanu stood at the bottom of the stone steps, chest rising and falling too fast, every movie he'd ever made suddenly feeling like a cartoon compared to this. The air was cool and thick, humming with a quiet power that pressed against his skin. Candlelight painted the chamber in gold and shadow. Elias faced him in his black coat, looking nothing like the tired mechanic from the garage upstairs. His posture was straight, his presence heavy and calm, like a storm that had learned how to stand still. A woman appeared in front of Elias, so quickly Keanu almost missed the movement. One moment she was by a pillar, the next she was a shield of pale hands and fierce eyes between the king and the intruder. "Human," she hissed, not with anger exactly, but with raw fear. "He found us." Keanu's instincts, trained by years of fake fights and choreographed danger, flared, but he forced his hands open, palms up. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said, voice low but clear. "I didn't even know this was here, I just came to—" He stopped because the rest sounded ridiculous now. "I came to help you with your bills." Elias lifted one hand. The woman froze, then slowly stepped aside, though her eyes never left Keanu. "It's all right, Leora," Elias said. The calm in his voice pulled the room's tension down a little. "He is a guest, unexpected but not unwelcome." Leora's jaw clenched. "The covenant forbids humans in the court. You wrote that law yourself." "And I have broken my own laws before," Elias replied quietly, "usually when compassion demanded it." He stepped toward Keanu, the hem of his coat whispering across the stone. Up close, the difference in him was impossible to ignore. His eyes glowed, not bright, but deep like embers under ash. His skin held no flush of blood, yet there was more life in his gaze than in most people Keanu met under studio lights. Keanu swallowed. "So you're really—" "A vampire," Elias finished for him, not flinching from the word. "Yes, and these are the last of my people." The others watched in silence, 6, maybe 7 of them, each with a slightly different look but the same strange stillness, like statues that might move if you blinked. Some looked curious. Some looked tired. One, a young man with nervous eyes, looked absolutely terrified of Keanu. "I should probably be screaming," Keanu said, a little dazed. "Or running or crossing myself, but I'm just here." "Fear comes later," Elias said softly, "after the questions." He gestured toward a simple stone bench near the center of the room. "Sit, if you like. You're pale." Keanu gave a breath of an incredulous laugh. "Says the guy who literally glows like moonlight." Elias almost smiled. The almost made it real. Keanu sat. His legs were unsteady, so he was grateful when the stone caught him. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to focus. "How long have you—" "No, wait, that's too big. Start smaller. Is this why you only work nights?" "Yes." Elias folded his hands behind his back like a patient teacher. "The sun is unkind to us. It does not kill instantly, as your movies love to show, but it burns us slowly, painfully. I prefer not to test my limits." "And the blood?" Keanu asked, forcing the words out carefully. "Do you know?" "We drink," Elias said. "We must, but we do not take it by force." He nodded toward a row of clay jugs and glass bottles lined carefully along the far wall. "Hospitals, clinics, volunteers who sign forms and are paid better than most of your side jobs in Hollywood. We survive on what is given, not stolen. That is the rule here." A man with a kind face and silver in his dark hair stepped forward. "We haven't hunted in a century," he added, his tone defensive but proud. "The king forbade it. We might be monsters by nature, but we choose something else." Keanu listened, his heartbeat loud in his own ears. Part of him was screaming that this was insane. Another part, the deeper part that had watched people judge strangers every day for things they didn't understand, was strangely calm. "You run a shelter upstairs," he said slowly, watching Elias. "You fix cars for cheap. You feed kids and give them beds. That's what I saw first. That part doesn't change, right?" "It is the truest part of me," Elias answered. Leora stepped closer, her anger cooling into something more complex. "He could expose us," she said. "An actor of all things, one photograph, one interview, everything you've built gone. The hunters would finish what they started centuries ago." "Hunters," Keanu repeated. Another voice cut in, low and disapproving. A tall man with angular features and sharp eyes stepped out of the ring of candles. "This is foolishness, my king. The covenant is clear. No human may see the court and leave with their memory intact." His gaze locked on Keanu like he was a problem to be solved. "We erase him or we end him. There is no third way." The words hit Keanu like a bucket of ice water. He stood a little too fast. "End me? Whoa, hey." Elias' voice cracked through the chamber like a quiet thunderclap. "Enough, Darius." The tall man stiffened, but his eyes did not soften. "You swore, Elias, after Vienna, after Paris, after all the blood. You swore you would never risk our people for the sake of one human's kindness." "And I meant it," Elias said. He turned, facing his coven, his coat catching the candlelight like a shadow with edges of gold. "But I also swore something else long before that. I swore I would not become the thing they feared. I will not kill a man who walked into my home with nothing but concern in his hands." He looked back at Keanu. "You came here to help, didn't you?" Keanu swallowed and nodded, suddenly remembering the folder lying on the steps behind him. Yeah, I found your letters, the final notices. I talked to a friend. There's a way to buy out your debt, maybe turn the shelter into something official again. I didn't want to embarrass you. I just thought you shouldn't lose that building after everything you've done. The vampires stared at him like he'd spoken a spell. You came to save the king's garage, Leora said slowly, as if testing the words. Keanu shrugged weakly. Some people click donate online. I show up with paperwork. We all do what we can, right? Something fragile shifted in Elia's face. For a second, the king dropped away and the mechanic stood there again, old, tired, but deeply, painfully human. This is exactly why he is dangerous, Darius snapped. Good intentions are the easiest path to disaster. Elias ignored him. He took a step toward Keanu, then another, until they were close enough that Keanu could see the fine cracks in the vampire's calm. If I ask you to keep this secret, Elias said quietly, will you? Keanu met his glowing eyes, and for once the movie star and the man were perfectly aligned. I've had secrets buried on me for years, he said. Friends, addictions, directors' breakdowns, fans, letters they'd never want their families to see. I can carry this one too. I won't say a word to anyone. Silence stretched. Somewhere high above them, a car rolled past on the street, its distant rumble like thunder underwater. Leora studied Keanu's face as if she were reading a contract written in muscle and bone. Finally, she spoke. His heartbeat doesn't lie. He's scared, but he's not planning betrayal. So we trust a stranger? Darius demanded. We trust my judgment, Elias replied, steel sliding under his gentle tone. That is what it means to have a king. I choose mercy. He lifted his hand, but instead of pointing at Keanu, he turned his palm outward toward the circle of vampires. If any harm comes to this man from our kind, Elias said, his voice ringing with old authority, it will pass through me first. He let the promise hang heavy and bright. Is that understood? One by one they bowed their heads. Darius did at last, jaw tight. Keanu released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His legs felt weak, but his chest felt strangely light. Thank you, he said softly. You should not thank someone for not killing you, Elias replied, but there was a hint of wryness in it now. It sets a very low bar for friendship. Before Keanu could answer, the young vampire with the nervous eyes flinched and turned his head toward the ceiling. Someone's upstairs, he whispered. Heartbeat fast, breath shallow, there at the door. Instantly the room sharpened. Candles seemed to burn colder. Leora's eyes narrowed. Did you bring someone with you? She asked Keanu. No, Keanu said. I came alone, I swear. The young vampire closed his eyes, listening. There's metal in his hands, plastic, fingers tapping like this. He mimed quick presses with his thumb. Phone, he keeps lifting it, taking pictures maybe. Keanu's stomach dropped. Paparazzi, he muttered. They must have followed me, I thought I lost them. Darius stepped toward the stairs, every line of his body predatory. Then your human has already begun to destroy us. Elias' face hardened, the softness gone in an instant. No one hurts him, he said sharply. Not the intruder, not Keanu. He turned to the steps, coat flaring. The candles nearest the stairs guttered as if a wind had passed through them. Stay here, he told his coven. To Keanu he added, you at my side. Elias, you can't let another human, Leora began. Trust me, Elias said, not looking back. Tonight we will see if mercy can move faster than fear. He started up the stairs, each step drawing him closer to the thin line between his two worlds. Keanu followed, heart hammering, not knowing if they were about to save a stranger, erase a memory, or light the fuse on the very war Elias had spent centuries trying to avoid. At the top, just beyond the metal door, the faint click of a camera shutter snapped again. Elias paused with his hand on the handle, closed his eyes for one breath, and whispered more to himself than anyone else, let there be another way. Then he pulled the door wide open. The fluorescent light of the garage felt harsh after the candle-lit chamber. The smell of oil and rubber rushed in all at once, along with the thin, sharp scent of human anxiety. A young man in a faded hoodie stood by the front window, half hidden behind a display tire. His camera was raised, lens glinting under the buzzing lights. At the sudden slam of the metal door, he jerked, spun, and almost dropped the camera. His eyes went wide when he saw Elias and Keanu step out of the back. "Oh man," he blurted, "you were here, I knew it." Keanu's shoulders sagged. "Miguel," he groaned softly. The guy blinked. "You remember me?" "Yeah," Keanu said. "You've been outside set since what, daylight chase? You always apologize when security chases you off." Miguel flushed, gripping his camera tighter. "I try not to be a jerk about it," he said. "Rent's brutal, gotta eat." His gaze darted between Keanu and Elias. "Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. You disappeared off the radar for a week. People online are freaking out. I saw you come into this place the other night. Then you're back tonight and the light goes weird and I thought, okay, something's up. I just wanted a shot, maybe a story." "Some stories are heavier than you think," Elias said quietly. Miguel frowned, finally really looking at him. To him, Elias probably still looked like an old mechanic in a blue shirt, not a king in a hidden hall. But something in the man's eyes made his hand lower a little. "You the owner?" Miguel asked. "Sorry if I freaked you out. I know cameras in your face. It's not the camera that frightens me," Elias said. "It's what happens when people believe everything they see." Keanu stepped closer, hands raised in a calming gesture. "Miguel, listen. Whatever you think is happening here, it's not a scandal. It's not some secret affair or meltdown. I came to help a friend with his shop. That's it." Miguel's gaze flicked to the door behind them, the one Elias had just come through. "Then why is there a basement with weird lights? I heard voices, like a meeting, you hiding something down there. Illegal stuff, drugs, underground fights. Man, if you're in trouble, people will want to know." The truth pressed itself against the back of Keanu's teeth. He bit it down. "It's not like that." Miguel's eyes sharpened. "Then let me look. If it's nothing, I'll say it's nothing. You know I don't sell lies, not on purpose anyway." Elias moved before Keanu could answer. He stepped in front of the door, not fast enough to shock, just firmly enough to make a point. "No one goes down there," he said, voice firm but not unkind. Miguel hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "With respect, sir, this isn't just about you. When a big star disappears into a random garage for hours and strange things happen, people talk. If I don't show something, someone else will. At least I'd tell it straight." Darius's words echoed in Keanu's mind. Good intentions are the easiest path to disaster. "Elias," Keanu murmured, "what do we do?" Elias looked at Miguel for a long moment. The boy's fear sat right on the surface. Fear of losing his chance, fear of wasted hours, deeper fear hiding under that, fear of not paying rent, of getting sick, of someone he loved getting worse. It was all there in the tightness of his jaw and the slight tremble in his hand. "What is it you really need?" Elias asked softly. Miguel blinked. "I just told you a story, a paycheck." "No," Elias said. "That's what you think you need beneath that." Miguel hesitated, then laughed once, bitter and small. "You gonna fix my whole life, old man? You gonna pay my mom's hospital bills? Get me out of the hole I'm in because this city only respects you if you're already rich?" He shook his head. "Nobody does that. People just say thoughts and prayers and scroll on." Keanu felt the words like a punch. He thought of the folder waiting on the steps below, full of plans to quietly save a garage without making it a headline. He thought of the kids in the photos on Elias' walls, and how many times someone must have walked past them without seeing. Elias took a slow breath. His next words felt heavier than the air. "If I asked you to delete every picture, every second of video you took tonight," he said, "and walk away with nothing but your word that you will never speak of this place, could you do it?" Miguel let out a hysterical little sound. "Man, no offense, but that sounds like a fairy tale test. Give up your magic beans and trust the weird stranger. I can't pay my mom's medicine with my word." Keanu's decision came from the same place that had made him pull over that night when the engine started to die. The place that had driven him to show up with a folder of options instead of a text that said, "Good luck." "Then we change the equation," he said. Both men looked at him. Miguel, Keanu continued, how much do you make selling a good set of photos of me on a weird night in a place like this? Miguel frowned, calculating by habit. Depends who buys. Maybe 500, maybe $1,000 if the tabloids decide to be dramatic. Rent for like half a month. Groceries for 3 weeks if I skip fresh fruit. How much would you make as an official unit photographer on a film set? Keanu asked. For 6 months. Miguel stared. Those guys, their union, that's real money. I don't even have the right card, man. You have the eye, Keanu said. I've seen your work online. You capture people like they're not performing. That's rare. He glanced at Elias. My new movie starts shooting nights this week. I can get you in to meet the producer. No promises, but a fair shot, on one condition. Miguel's fingers tightened around his camera again. What condition? You delete everything from tonight, Keanu said. Every frame, and you never ever come near this basement door again. Not for curiosity, not for money. Not even if someone offers you more than you've ever seen. Miguel stared at him, then at Elias, then at the door. This is insane, he whispered. You're asking me to walk away from easy money for a chance at maybe something better. What if you're just saying that to shut me up? Keanu didn't look offended. He just stepped closer until they were nearly face to face. Look me in the eyes and tell me if I'm lying. Miguel did. All the years of movie sets and interviews had trained Keanu to hold eye contact, to be present. Under that steady, tired kindness, Miguel's suspicion faltered. He let out a breath. You're not lying. Elias watched quietly, a strange mix of pride and sorrow in his expression. This was what he'd hoped for centuries ago, that humans might someday speak to each other like this instead of raising torches. Even if he was, Elias said gently, you can still choose the harder right over the easier wrong. That choice will change you more than any job. Miguel's throat worked as he swallowed. Slowly, with hands that shook just a little, he opened the menu on his camera. The screen's cold light reflected in his eyes. Every shot, he asked. Every one, Keanu said. Miguel scrolled, thumb hovering. There were images there that could have paid his bills for weeks. A famous actor in a strange garage, shadows at odd angles, one frame where candlelight from the basement had bled up through the crack of the door, turning the room unnaturally gold. His thumb pressed down. One by one, the photos vanished. When the last one disappeared, Miguel let the camera fall against its strap and scrubbed a hand over his face. I'm either the dumbest guy in L.A., he muttered, or the bravest. Usually, Elias said, those are the same person. The tension in the room eased like a tight muscle unclenching. For a moment, it almost felt ordinary, just 3 men in a dingy garage, standing under bad lights and talking about choices. Then Miguel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. That's weird. What is it? Keanu asked. Miguel hesitated, then turned the screen so they could see. A text from an unknown number glowed at the top. Did you get good angles? Send everything you have of the garage. Bonus if you catch what's under it. Keanu felt the hairs on his arms rise. Who sent that? I don't know, Miguel said. Somebody slipped me a card on set yesterday. No name, just a number and a logo, looked like a security company. They said if I ever saw you go anywhere strange, they'd pay double. He swallowed. I thought it was creepy, but double is double, you know? I didn't tell them I was coming here tonight, I swear. Show me the logo, Elias said quietly. Miguel tapped the message. A small icon appeared where the contact image should have been, a stylized sun pierced by a silver spear. Elias went very still. Keanu noticed, you know them. Yes, Elias said, voice suddenly hoarse. We all do. He reached out and before Miguel could flinch, gently took the phone, turning it in his hand like an ancient relic. In your language, they call themselves Aurora Security now, he said. In mine, they were once the Order of the Dawn, hunters, the ones who drove us into caves and ruins, who burned our libraries and called it cleansing. Leora's warning echoed in his memory. The hunters would finish what they started. Miguel shifted uneasily. Look, if they're bad news, I don't have to talk to them again. I'll block the number, toss the card. I'm not trying to be part of some war. There will be no war, Elias said, more to himself than to either of them. Not if I can help it. He handed the phone back. Block them, erase the contact, and if anyone ever asks you about this place, you tell them it's just an old man's garage that barely stays open. Nothing more. Miguel nodded quickly, fingers flying over the screen. Done. Look, I should go. I need to, think about my life choices. He glanced at Keanu. You weren't kidding about that meeting. I'll text you the details, Keanu said. Bring a portfolio and maybe a shirt without 3 holes in it. Miguel gave a watery laugh. Yes, sir, thank you, both of you. I won't forget this. You will, Elias murmured, but only in the ways that hurt you. The good will stay. Miguel didn't quite understand, but he nodded anyway, slung his camera over his shoulder and slipped out into the night. The garage fell quiet again. The silence felt different now, not empty but charged, like the pause between lightning and thunder. You didn't use your powers on him, Keanu said softly. You could have, right, to wipe his memory. Yes, Elias admitted, but every time I steal someone's choice, I become more of the thing I'm trying not to be. He looked at Keanu. Tonight, I decided to trust your kind more than my fear. Keanu leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. And my kind decided not to sell you for rent money. That's something. They shared a tired, genuine smile. From the stairs behind them, a soft voice called, Is it safe? Leora stepped up into the room, followed by the young vampire and the man with silver in his hair. Their faces were wary but curious. For now, Elias said, but the Order of the Dawn is sniffing at our door. The hunters, the young one whispered, after all this time. They have new names and better phones, Elias replied, but the same old fear in their veins. Keanu straightened. If they're watching the garage, you can't stay hidden down there forever. They'll notice deliveries, strange hours, anything. You need a way to look normal. Leora snorted softly. We are vampires, Mr. Reeves. Normal is not available in our size. Maybe it is, Keanu said. At least enough to keep them from digging deeper. You fix cars, you care for kids. You're a neighborhood guy with a stubborn old business. That's about as normal as it gets. Elias watched him closely. You have an idea. I have a stage, Keanu said slowly, as if he were piecing it together while he spoke. Lights, cameras, a project that needs a real mechanic for authenticity, a reason for people to be in and out of this place at all hours without it looking strange, and a way to pay off your debts without some faceless bank ever wondering why the money showed up. He paused, thinking of Miguel of the kids of the Hunters' Sunspear logo. Come to set with me, he said. Tonight, bring 1 or 2 people you trust. Let me introduce you to my world. We'll make you look like part of the chaos. If the hunters are watching, give them exactly what they expect, an eccentric old man whose garage just got lucky. And if your world does not like what it sees in mine, Elias asked, then they'll have to deal with the fact that their favorite action star has a vampire for a friend, Keanu said, and that he's not the villain. The room stirred at that, the idea itself reckless, impossible, and somehow right. Leora looked at Elias. You always said we couldn't hide forever, that someday the world would grow too small for shadows. Yes, Elias said. He felt the weight of centuries pressing on his shoulders and the faint, impossible tug of hope pushing back. I did. He thought of the children upstairs, of the eviction notices, of the hunters who had driven him from kingdom to kingdom. He thought of Keanu's hand closing over his at the counter, warm and honest. Very well, the Vampire King said. Tonight the shadows go to Hollywood. Keanu laughed, the sound bright in the dim garage. I never thought I'd be saying this, but great. Grab a jacket, we're late. Elias turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the open door. As he stepped out into the night with Keanu at his side and 2 of his people a few paces behind, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not dread, not hunger. Anticipation. Far across town, under the cold glare of studio floodlights, a man in a gray coat watched crew members build a fake city street. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. No photos from Miguel, no evidence from the garage. He smiled thinly. "No matter," he murmured, slipping the phone away. "If the king walks into the light, we'll see him there." He turned toward the main gate, where a tired security guard was letting vehicles in. On the list for tonight's shoot was a new name, scribbled in rushed handwriting. Elias Mechanic Consultant. The man in the gray coat smiled wider. "Come, your majesty," he whispered to the knight. "Show me how merciful a king can be when the cameras are rolling." And as the first stars disappeared behind rising studio lights, Elias stepped through the gates of the set, unaware that every step toward the brightness was also a step toward the hunters who had waited lifetimes for him to surface again. The first thing that hit Elias was the light. It poured over the studio lot in hard white sheets, not the gentle scatter of moon or the cruel purity of noon, but something in between, sunlight built by human hands. Giant lamps hung from cranes like artificial stars. Cables ran along the ground in thick black rivers. People in headsets and tool belts moved everywhere, shouting words that sounded like another language. "Background to 1, lock up the street. Where's camera B?" Keanu walked beside Elias through the chaos, a calm center in the storm. He wore his costume already, dark coat, bruised knuckle makeup, a rubber pistol at his hip. Leora trailed a few steps behind, disguised in jeans, a black hoodie, and a headset she'd borrowed from a distracted production assistant. Her eyes were everywhere. "Remember to blink," she murmured in Elias' ear. "Humans stare less than you think." Elias forced his eyelids to move at a normal pace. The overhead lights prickled against his skin, not deadly, not yet, but hot, like standing too close to an open oven. "This is a battlefield," he said quietly. Keanu smiled. "Welcome to night shoots." He led Elias toward a constructed city street. Fake bricks, fake graffiti, a fake alley piled with real trash. A stunt team warmed up near the far wall, practicing falls and spins. Extras in ragged coats waited for their cues, sipping coffee from paper cups. A woman with a bob haircut and tired eyes spotted them and marched over, tablet in hand. "Is this our miracle mechanic?" she asked. "Sophia, this is Elias," Keanu said. "He can tell us if the engine in scene 12 could actually explode like you wrote it." "I'll be gentle," Sophia promised, shaking Elias' hand. "Just tell me if anything we're doing would make real car people scream at the screen." "That is a long list," Elias said. For the first time, Sophia really looked at him. Something in his old-world posture and steady gaze made her expression soften. "You've seen a lot of engines, huh?" "More than I can count," he replied, which was only half an exaggeration. Next, Keanu introduced him to Marcus, the stunt coordinator, a compact man with a broken nose and a grin that said he'd enjoyed earning it. "So you're the guy who keeps this guy's actual car alive," Marcus said, jerking a thumb at Keanu. "Respect, come watch rehearsal, tell me if our vampires move like clowns." The word hit Elias strangely. He followed them to the alley set, Leora sticking close, eyes narrowed against the glare. The first rehearsal started. Fake fog rolled in. Background actors hit their marks. 3 stunt performers in pale makeup and yellow contact lenses rushed Keanu, bearing prop fangs hissing through their teeth. Their movements were wide, showy, all flapping arms and big spins. The crew watched, nodding. It looked like every vampire fight scene anyone had ever shot. To the real vampire king, it looked like children playing at war. When Sophia called cut, Marcus turned to Elias. "Well, too much." Elias chose his words carefully. "They move as if they are trying to impress each other," he said, "not kill you." Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, but the audience needs to see the hits." "They will," Elias said. "Fear is in the small things, not the big ones." He stepped onto the set before he could overthink it. "May I?" Marcus waved him on. "Show us." The 3 stunt performers watched him approach. An old man in a borrowed jacket, moving with the slow